someone you forgot, still thinks about you. Not sometimes, not randomly. More often than you'd ever believe, and the strange part, you almost felt it. At some point, for a split second, you thought about them out of nowhere, and then ignored it. That wasn't random, because while you were moving on, they were still trying to convince themselves that they already did. On the surface, they look fine. They don't text you. They don't ask about you. They don't show up anymore. So you assumed something simple. If they cared, they would have come back. That's where you're wrong, because not all feelings disappear. Some of them just become invisible. They turn into silence, into hesitation, into messages that never get sent. There were moments you were closer to hearing from them than you think. A message typed, read, rewritten, and deleted. A call almost made, stopped at the last second. Your name sitting in their search bar, with no action taken. You never saw any of it. All you saw was nothing. And nothing is easy to misunderstand. You called it indifference. You called it closure. You called it the end. But sometimes, silence isn't the absence of feeling. It's what happens when there's too much of it. Too much pride to reach out. Too much fear to be rejected. Too much history to pretend it means nothing. So they chose the only option that felt safe. Do nothing. And that nothing is what convinced you that you didn't matter, but you did. Just not in a way you could see. Because people don't always miss you in ways that come back to you. Sometimes they miss you quietly. In moments that don't belong to you anymore. Late at night, when everything slows down and distractions stop working. In random places, where something small pulls you back into their mind. A song, a phrase, a familiar feeling they can't explain. And suddenly, you're there again, not as a person, but as a memory that still feels real. And here's the part that changes everything. They don't know what to do with it. Reaching out risks everything. Ignoring it solves nothing. So they stay stuck in between, that strange space where you're no longer in their life, but not fully gone either. And if you're honest, you've felt this too. You've checked someone's profile just to see if they changed. You've reread old messages you told yourself didn't matter anymore. You've thought about reaching out. And did in single quotes. So now ask yourself, what if you are that person for someone else? Not the one who was forgotten. Not the one who didn't matter, but the one they never fully let go of. The one they learned to live without, but never stopped remembering. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Some people don't leave your life. They just leave your reality. And from that point on, you exist in a different way. In fragments. In moments. In thoughts that show up without permission and disappear before they can be understood. You became a what if they carry quietly, not strong enough to bring them back, but not weak enough to disappear. And maybe you've been measuring your worth based on what people showed you, who stayed, who fought, who came back. But that's only the visible layer. There's another one. The one you'll never see. People who miss you but stay silent. People who remember you but never reach out. People who almost came back and didn't. And you'll never know how close it was, how many times you crossed their mind, how many times they almost chose you again. And maybe that's the hardest part, not that they forgot you, but that they did in single quotes. They just chose not to return. And somehow, that hurts more, because it means you mattered. Just not enough to change what happened. And still, even now, in a life you're no longer part of, you exist. Not as a message, not as a name on their screen, but as a thought that keeps coming back. And the quietest truth, they don't talk about it, they don't act on it, they don't fix anything, but they feel it. Every now and then, just enough to remind them they never fully let you go. And here's the part no one admits, even to themselves. Missing someone isn't always about wanting them back. Sometimes it's about realizing they never fully left, not in your life, but in your mind. There's a difference, and it's dangerous, because you can move on in reality and still be stuck somewhere else entirely. They don't want to restart the story. They don't even believe it would work anymore. But the feeling, it didn't disappear. It adapted. It became quieter, more controlled, more hidden, but not gone. You exist for them now, in fragments, a moment, a memory, a version of you that only lives in their head. And that version, It never ages, never changes, never disappoints. It stays exactly as they remember you. And that's the problem. Because that version is impossible to compete with. Real life moves forward. People evolve. Things break, shift, fade. But memory freezes. And sometimes, that frozen version of you is what keeps them from ever fully letting go. Not who you are now, but who you were when everything still meant something. And here's the truth that hits harder than it should. You don't need to be present to still affect someone. You don't need to speak to still be heard in their mind. You don't need closure to remain unfinished. Because people don't move on in straight lines. They loop. They revisit moments they said they were done with. They replay conversations that no longer exist. They remember at the worst possible times. And sometimes they miss you. Not loudly. Not enough to act, but enough to feel it when everything else goes quiet. A thought that appears without permission and disappears before they can do anything about it. So they keep living. They build something new. They meet new people. They laugh again. And from the outside, they look like they moved on. But there's always something left. A trace, not strong enough to bring them back, but not weak enough to disappear. And maybe you've been measuring your worth based on what was visible, who stayed, who texted, who fought for you, but that's only the surface. There's another layer you'll never see. People who almost reached out, people who stopped themselves, people who still think about you, but chose silence instead. And here's the part that hurts. You'll never know how close it was. How many times they almost came back, how many times they chose not to. You weren't forgotten. You were avoided. Not because you didn't matter, but because you did. And coming back would have meant feeling everything again. So they chose distance and called it moving on. And maybe right now, there's someone in your mind too. Someone you don't talk to anymore. Someone you told yourself you're over. But if they showed up today, you know it wouldn't feel neutral. That's what this is. Not love. Not closure. Something in between. Something unfinished. And maybe the hardest truth isn't that someone misses you. It's this. They might always miss you and still never come back, because some feelings don't disappear. People just learn how to live without acting on them. So if you ever felt like you were easy to forget, like you didn't matter, like you were just a passing moment, you weren't. You became something else. Memory they return to when they least expect it. A feeling they don't talk about. A version of the past they quietly carry forward. Not enough to change their life, but enough to never fully leave it. And the quietest truth, they don't reach out. They don't fix anything. They don't try again. But sometimes, in moments you'll never see, they think of you for just a second longer than they should. And in that second, everything comes back. And then they let it go. Again. Because some feelings don't end. They just become something no one is brave enough to follow.